And welcome back. After experiencing homelessness, poverty, and for 7 years being incarcerated, our next guest knew the way to fix the broken system was to invest in local neighborhoods as well as build communities. He now works as a community organizer on local issues such as Close Rikers campaign. Incidentally, on October 21st, the New York City Council voted to close Rikers Island by the year 2026. He continues his work now, not only influencing but empowering his community, making right choices, but also getting those in power to create more opportunities. Here to share more about his work is Vidal Guzman Jr. And Vidal, good to have you here on the Social Justice Forums.
Thank you for having me. I'm just happy to keep doing this work and keep empowering the community. So yeah, thank you for just having me here and just having a conversation with the community about what's going on in our neighborhoods and our streets.
Yeah, well, you can talk about what's going on in the neighborhoods and streets because literally you've lived it, you've experienced it, and you've had some challenges. Talk to me a little bit about your life and how you grew up.
Yeah, my mom's is actually an individual who was an immigrant, so she came here for a better life, as anyone who came here in America for the pursuit of happiness, for abilities to have the abilities of what this country has said that it lives on to. And we was homeless at an early age. When I was 5, 6 years old. I started selling drugs with my older brother when I was 8 or 9 years old. Most of our role models were drug dealers, pimps, and gang members. Everyone who was a role model never came back to our neighborhood and left our neighborhood. And at 14, 15 years old, being in a street organization and being in the streets for a long time, I became active with the street organizations. My first time being incarcerated was 16, 17 years old. I came home when I was 18 and I got reincarcerated again at 19, so I was 24. I spent approximately 2.5 years in solitary confinement. I've been home 5.5 years, working on the Close Rikers Island campaign and other campaigns as like Erase the Gang Database, Raise the Age, and numerous campaigns around the city who is centered around directly impacted people.
Yeah. So for you, what was the turning point? I mean, you spent time incarcerated. You talk about solitary confinement. You're very transparent about your story. What for you was that turning point to say, hey, you know what? I got to do better.
Yeah. As a human being, it's a scary moment. I was in solitary confinement. It was my second to last time being in solitary confinement. And individuals who was incarcerated was people who I was around who had 25 to life, who had no possibilities to be paroled. But these was the individuals who created the conversation how to return people back to society. So these individuals was the people who became my role models and educated me and empowered me to say, if you're going back to the community, never give up. If you hear a no, just keep fighting until you hear that yes. And I remember, when a mentor said to me, he said, people keep getting locked up and keep giving up on themselves. There's two difference between the system oppressing you and then yourself not believing in yourself. And I think for me, when I landed in solitary confinement my second to last time, I had someone right next to me who was in solitary confinement, who was 18 years old, facing life. And we had, not doing time with no possibility to be paroled, was 18 years old. And then someone right next to me, next door in solitary confinement, was around 67 years old and spent majority of their time incarcerated. And I had to think for myself, it's like, where do I want to go? What is my life? How do I think about my life? And what exactly do I want to do in my life? And there was a moment where I looked at myself in the mirror. I said, I have to do something. I have to empower my community. I have to do something for my family. I have to represent myself and give myself a new beginning as a human being, to empower my community, to empower people around me, but to change the cycle about the thinking about people who've been through what I've been through. Because I think anyone already put me on the side and say, hey, this guy is beyond unreachable. We can, he's beyond, we can't give him anything. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't. I just needed the right role models and the right people. So yeah.
Yeah. And so here you are now. You're using your voice for advocacy. You're actually, advocating on behalf of young people, but you're also advocating for that prison system, talking about particularly Rikers Island, closing Rikers Island. We understand that Rikers Island has had its own set of challenges, but talk to me about why you feel it's important that Rikers Island be closed.
Yeah, look at in the moment where we're at right now. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a Black Lives Matter revolution happening. And the moment became is like, how do we center and empower a community that have been the most harmed? You know, this country and the city has, and people who have been people of color and communities of color has seen the communities not being underfunded, over incarcerated, over police. And Rikers Island was the tale of two cities. You know what I'm saying? The abilities of knowing that Rikers or the jail system has not operated the way that it's supposed to operate, right? Like it was supposed to make sure people are being returned back to society and have all the proper tools that they actually need. But our residuum rate is 70%. And Rikers Island is known for years for people going in and never coming out. And it's known for Gladiator School, Torture Island. And when people go on that bridge, they know what exactly they're supposed to expect as a human being and how you're supposed to react. You know, we know that Rikers Island for per person is approximately 330, 40K. When we come and look at some of the what we can actually do with that money, it only takes 30 to 25K per person to take them through reentry, to give them the resources they need to get themselves and their platform and their abilities or their life back in the right place. I think there's a moment as a city that we knew that the time for Rikers Island to end, to close was now. And now is we're beyond the talking point. I think the train left for that talking point. And I mean, when I mean as closing Rikers, because people has as directly impacted person like as myself, I know this was the right path. Having the city close Rikers Island, going to 12 to 4 jails, and improving conditions for anyone who's remanded, because we know violence is not going to happen. It's not going to end tomorrow. We have to keep investing in communities that have been the most harmed, especially the 8 communities that are filling our jail system up, that are the most impacted by police, or the communities that had been overseen around has not been invested in. So yeah.
Mhm. And when we talk about being remanded, that was your life. I mean, it was your lifestyle. You talked about being in solitary confinement, living in solitary confinement for a long period of time. Take us in.
Yeah.
What is solitary confinement, and give me about the experience. What was it like being by yourself, and for somebody on the outside who's never experienced it, make it real.
Yeah, man. As a Harlem native, you know, I be very truthful with you. When the country was shut down, a lot of radio stations was like reaching out to me from like UK and like London, because they had to talk to people who've been in solitary confinement, how to keep citizens inside their house and how they actually you know, stayed in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, you know, like being in solitary confinement, some things that we have is not there, you know, where you can just pick up a book when you want to, when you can just leave a cell when you want to, when you can eat when you want to, when you can cook when you want to, when you can get in the shower when you want to, when you could call your family when you want to, when you can write a letter when you want to. A lot of these things are not accessible and cannot happen when you want it to happen. And in solitary confinement, there's a thinking, and we know there's a scientist, you know, a lot of scientists did studies on this. You know, people who land in solitary confinement, a lot of, you know, stuff start happening to their mind. You know, I landed in solitary confinement at early age when I was 19, 20 years old. We know solitary confinement, we know a child or a person's mind doesn't fully develop to 25. So adding solitary confinement to that actually impacted me. You know what I'm saying? It impacted the way I you know, even memory. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I forget stuff, you know, in a way that is not regular, you know? So I think solitary confinement has a deep impact in people's life. And for me, like when the pandemic happened, I just thought to myself, well, everyone was kind of freaking out, you know what I'm saying, of staying in the house because people had to stay in the house. I was like prepared, you know, and for myself, that is not a good thing, but it is a good thing, you know?
Right.
So I think there's a certain point, as I, this a couple months ago, as I was using my story to empower people to stay in, hopefully it helped a lot of people out, you know, to know how to stay in as the pandemic was happening. And it's crazy to say how to interconnect with solitary confinement, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So when you were in solitary confinement, walk me through this. There's nothing's coming in except for what you eat.
Now nothing is coming in except what you eat. So you have different places, jails and prisons has different ways. So you have the jail system where you are first going into solitary confinement. You're first going into like an intake process where they have you by yourself as they're processing you to either go to a bigger box where solitary confinement, where I was in Green Correctional Facility. Green Correctional Facility is a youth facility where is also a hub for the biggest solitary confinement for people who are incarcerated or people who was around that hub. So in Green Correctional Facility, you have an intake process where people are preparing you to go to the big box. That's what they call solitary confinement. And like you're not having any papers, you're only intaking water. Sometimes even myself, like I have a finger right now that, you know, I had to get surgery on. I was even in solitary confinement where we had to do a hunger strike because medical attention wasn't coming to us. And I found out that day, you know, the example, that day, I found out that a lot of us who was inside in solitary confinement wasn't getting medical attention, you know? So like, you know, these are things that can happen. Most of our rights are violated in solitary confinement. Most of our abilities of being a human beings are violated. Our way to continue education is hard in solitary confinement. You know, the things as a human being that I dealt with, I had to either, you know, you really get stuck and envision anytime or say in the story when you're reading a book, right? Like these are things that happen, like, you know, as a human being that I dealt with in solitary confinement and things that I dealt with is beyond the the dehuman of a human being.
Right.
And I think like it was moments where from the hunger strikes of not getting medical attention, but even when you get in books and you're like in these characters of reading the books, you know, solitary confinement does a lot to a human being. And some of the things that I say to a lot of people who are coming home from solitary confinement and have not lost their mind, a strong mind, and is still continuing to 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 still heal themselves from the process of being in these in hellhole as like Rikers Island or jail and prisons or solitary confinement.
You're using your voice at this time right now. I mean, obviously, you've had this experience. You don't want anybody else to have that experience.
Yeah.
And also, you're using your voice to also say, listen, I want to put an end to mass incarceration because we're seeing too many people, and particularly communities of color, end up in mass incarceration, prison sentences that aren't fair and balanced. Talk to me about your work in ending mass incarceration.
Yeah, so I became active with the Close Rikers Island campaign as a member, and also as someone who was the youngest working on Raise the Age. And when I came into the work, I noticed that the directly impacted people didn't have a say at the table or had a table to sit at to talk about policies or talk about how exactly we want our community to look like. And I think for myself, you know, I was a part of empowering communities and empowering people who've been the most harmed to understand their organizing, to understand their voices, to understand how their community needs them. And we was able to build the biggest base of directly impacted people in the East Coast to empower their community in so many different ways. And this work has continued. This work has seen the power of organizing. When the mayor took office, there was 11,000 people on a daily detained on Rikers Island. Rikers Island is 12 facilities. There's 3 operating facilities close to the courtrooms, Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. I mean, in Manhattan. But like these, to see where we at right now, we are approximately less than 4,000 people detained from where the campaign started 4 years ago. That's a big accomplishment. We are the biggest city with the less people incarcerated. We are as low as like World War II or World War I. Let me correct that. Yeah. So I think we are in a moment where we are the biggest city with the less people incarcerated, and we can keep decarcerating more by investing in communities that have been the most harmed, by investing in cure violence, by investing in resources that making sure people have roofs over their head, food on the table, and to make sure we are creating entrepreneurship abilities for people who are coming home who are trying to become business owners. And most important things, I have to say this, as our community and the city and this country is getting more in the tech world, it's important for Black and Brown communities to get active in them spaces too, as we know, and those are 6-figure jobs. So I think there's a moment as we keep decarcerating, we're saying let's keep decarcerating, but let's keep investing in these communities that the system is most harming. So
Yeah, I want to go before we get out of the segment. I want to have an opportunity for people who may want to connect with you and some of the work that you're doing. How do they go about connecting with you?
yeah, definitely. So you can reach out to me through social media. I am Vidal Guzman. IAM Guzman. I'm doing a lot of the Black Lives Matter work right now with the Black Lives Matter leaders around the 5 boroughs, Long Island, New Jersey, helping them to empower their community. So right now, these are the work I'm doing, and yeah.
Yeah. Before I go, I want to ask you one other question about, a lot of questions have been asked about defunding the police.
Yeah.
And I know that you've had a lot of, police encounter. Talk to me about defunding the police. In favor of it, not in favor of it?
I'm in favor of it. It has to be done. The city is living on a $11 billion budget for the NYPD. Right now, a lawsuit has been released against the mayor and the NYPD and the way that they have been treating Black Lives Matter protesters and advocates since May. So this is the defund it has been an example to say public safety is important. And the public safety that exists right now is not safety. It's killing us. And it's killing us as people of color, people who has been living in these communities. And the defund is to invest in communities that have been the most impacted. Imagine how the budget would look like if more investments go into communities that have been the most harassed by police brutality, that have been the most underfunded and over incarcerated. This is something that this is not a imagination thinking. This is something that's happening. We can see a world where we are more resourced and people are getting getting the help that they actually need. That's what I believe. I believe in a world where actually kids get to walk down the street and not worry about police officers harassing them. I get to see a community that gets all the help they actually need. This is not imagination thinking. This is a reality, and we're seeing that as a collective and as an advocate. So.
Well, Vidal, I want to take time to say congratulations for the great, turnaround and how you're working now to bless the community and those who are actually a part of it. Great having a conversation with you. Got to bring you back so you can come in and share again.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Enjoy your rest of your day.
All righty, Vidal, thank you so much for being with us. And yes,